We live in the middle of what some people call a culture of complaint. Seems like it's very easy to either turn on your TV or get on the internet and find people arguing about any number of different things and to whine or complain about how things aren't going the way that you think they should go. Such a common thing. I looked on the internet there before this lesson, and I found different videos a person could go to. Some of the first, if you type in complain, there was videos that told you how to complain effectively, even in different languages. How to complain and get what you want was one of the top hits there on YouTube. And it's something that not only are people apparently seeking advice on how to do it better, but there's coaches out there. Complaint coaches who can help you figure it out about how to do it and do it in such a way that you can get what you really want. And I wanted to talk about that just a little bit because the Bible seems to take a kind of dim view of complaining. At least whenever it talks about complaining, kind of takes a dim view of it. There's a verse in Philippians where it says, do everything without complaining or arguing. And so it's a verse you don't see needle pointed on pillows very often. Not a verse that makes you feel guilty probably. Yeah, you might have complained even before you came to this study, like I don't have time for this. And it's just it kind of challenges all of us, right? Well, I don't think that complaining is in and of itself a sin. And even when Paul says do everything without complaining, I think he's making a larger point there, because even some of the heroes in the Bible would occasionally express frustration. But I think it's that attitude of resentment, of frustration with others, with leaders, and in particular with God. And when that resentment and frustration gets in the way of you being the kind of person you're supposed to be and doing the kinds of things you're supposed to do, that's where the trouble creeps up. And we've been, over the last couple weeks, looking at Numbers. And if you're familiar with the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, that's the fourth book, and Deuteronomy, those first 5 books of the Bible tells the story of how Israel went from being just a one man, just Abraham, and how it became this great nation. And it traces history from Adam and Eve all the way through to the Promised Land, through Moses and how to get to the Promised Land. And what the Numbers is typified by, if you read through the book of Numbers, is the people of Israel kind of getting crossways with God because they're frustrated with how He's delivering them. In Exodus, the book's named Exodus because it talks about the exodus of all the slaves, the Israelite slaves out of Egypt, and they're freed from slavery. God goes in there. They were all slaves for hundreds of years, and God frees them and brings them back to a new land and going to make a new nation out of them. But He doesn't make it easy. You know, God certainly could just teleport them from Egypt straight to Israel, but He doesn't do that. He certainly could have taken a shortcut. It even mentions that in Exodus. There was a shorter way to go than the route that He takes, but He was afraid. He had reasons for not doing that. And the Israelites at different times grumble. In fact, they start grumbling right on the Red Sea. You know, I mean, they've not even left Egypt and they're grumbling about how hard it is and the danger. And then He parts the Red Sea and they go across the Red Sea. And the next day, while they're on the shores of the Red Sea, they start complaining that there's not enough water and there's not enough food. And he gets them all the way to Mount Sinai. He gives them the 10 Commandments and shares the law with them. And for about a year, the Israelites camp out at Mount Sinai. And things go pretty well there for them. We don't read a lot of record of them grumbling or complaining during that year. But then in Numbers chapter 11, they start making their way across the desert there, and almost immediately the grumbling starts. They start getting frustrated that it says they complained about their hardships. And most of the hardships are, it's hot. It's dusty, it's dirty, it's just taken too long. And it really is childish. It's the kind of things that kids complain. How much longer, until we get there? And it says the anger of the Lord was aroused, and fire from the Lord burned among some of them. We don't know what this is, maybe lightning or something like that. Fire from the Lord burned amongst them, and some people died. I mean, the complaints were severe enough and intense enough that God responds kind of hard. And the people, it says, cried out to Moses, save us from God. Like it's talking to, mom, stand between us and dad and those kind of things. And they cry out to Moses, and he prays to the Lord, and the fire dies down. But they remembered it. Named that place a Taberah because fire from the Lord, and the Taberah refers to fire and how it came and burned amongst them. But it didn't last. I mean, the very next verse, that's verse 3, verse 4, it says the rabble with them began to crave other food. Now, the rabble here, it could be a derogatory way of talking about the Israelites, but probably means non-Israelites who had jumped in with them there. Some Egyptians who had jumped in with them, or other nations. It's probably a contemptuous deal about them. And well, they start to crave other food, and so they start complaining again. They said, if only we had meat to eat. Remember, we had fish in Egypt. Didn't pay for it. Well, yeah, you were slaves. The pigs don't have to pay for the slop that the farmer feeds them either, but they still aren't allowed to just come and go anyway. Well, remember the fish we had, and cucumbers, and melons, and leeks, and onions. So it's kind of an idealized memory of what Egypt was like. And they had been slaves, and that was awful, but at least we had good food. And now here he says, we've lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna. And manna is like a Hebrew word for what is it? It's a mystery kind of thing. And he describes the manna. And this is talked about in another place there in those on their trip, that God sent food to them every day. That God sends them something to eat every day. And it talks about the manna, that it looked like coriander seed. It looked like resin. People went around, they could gather it, you could grind it and crush it in a mortar and cook it in a pot. And it tasted like bread. Like something made with olive oil. And it was there every day. They never had to work for it. So God's basically giving them free food every day. And the complaint is not that they're hungry. The complaint is, we think we had better food when we were slaves. And when Moses heard the people complaining like that, and it had spread. Earlier, remember, he said the rabble. There's a few people on the outside edges, but now every family, and that's how complaining does. Complaining is contagious. It just starts to spread. One person grumbles, and it's very easy for everybody else to say, well, you think that's bad. Let me tell you something else. And then it just kind of grows. Well, the people of every family, they're wailing. So it's not just a little bit of a complaint, and the Lord is ticked off. He just sent some fire down to kind of wake everybody up, and now so then Moses starts complaining. And Moses has the right heart about things, but it's making him mad. Why are you talking to God? Why have you brought all this trouble on me? He says your servant, but he's polite way, courteous way of saying, why are you bringing all this headache to me? What have I done to displease you that you put the burden of all these people on me? Did I conceive them? Did I give them birth? Why did you have me carry them in my arms? Like a nurse carries an infant. There's a bunch of babies, he says. And where can I get meat for all these people? So they're wanting fish like they had in Egypt or leeks, onions and stuff. They keep wailing, give us meat to eat. I can't carry them. And he says to God, if you're going to treat me this way, please go ahead and just kill me. If that's how it's going to be, then I'm done. And so Moses complains too. Now, as a spoiler alert for this, we won't read it all, but God again responds kind of hard. To the people. He sends them quail, but it's a quail that makes them sick, and a lot of them die from a plague that comes with it's kind of an ugly, gross story. But he doesn't punish Moses. So there's complaining, and then there's complaining. So let's talk about that, and then I'll be done. I think there's a temptation in life to grumble when life's not going the way that you want it to. It kind of happens without thinking, and you want to as a human being. This goes beyond Bible. Just as being a good neighbor, good citizen, good member of the family, to not be that kind of person as best you can. People don't enjoy people like that, and for the most, and that's common sense, right? But the complaints that Moses is doing, he really is being treated unfair, not by God, but by all these sinners. And he doesn't really complain he just talks to God about it. He prays about it. He takes it straight to God. He keeps it between him and God doesn't punish Moses for that. But for the people, they don't take it straight to God. They complain to one another. They spread it around as much as they can. It becomes a whole attitude that spreads all over the camp, and God responds kind of hard to that. And that's the kind of complaining that we need to be especially careful about. When you live in a small town, It's so easy to get caught up in all the different controversies and rumor mills that go around. When somebody has a spicy story and you can toss out one too, so tempting to want to do that and to be part of the reason why it's contagious. And that kind of thing is dangerous and stupid and probably sinful. Philippians, I told you about this verse earlier. Philippians 2:14, do everything without grumbling, and that word grumbling can be complaint too, without grumbling or arguing, so you can be blameless and pure children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you'll shine amongst them like stars in the sky as you hold out the word of life. We weren't meant to be always finding and seeking out and dwelling upon the negative. This world will be unfair, it's a guarantee. But we were meant to be people who direct other people to God. We don't jump into the negative. We try to focus people on God who can really make change. And when we live that way, when we make that more our ambition, we're much more likely to be on the side of the angels.